Southeastern Bow Hunter Podcast.
All right, what is going on, guys? Welcome to episode 142 of Southeastern Bow Hunter Podcast. This is also episode 4, I believe, of the Whitetail series that we are doing. It's going to start getting a little spaced out. We're going to continue to do it, honestly, maybe even throughout the whole season. We'll just kind of see how it goes. But this episode is going to be with Mr. Michael Perry. So if you know who that is, I believe he holds the state record of Alabama off public land. So this episode is going to be for all you public land guys. I've had a lot of people reach out and say, hey, love what you're doing, but we need more public land. I guess tips and advice and you know, the people want to hear it and I want to hear it. So we're going to do it. So before we jump into it with Michael, got to run through the partners. I'm going to do this kind of fast. Working Class Bow Hunter. Been working with them for a little while. If you want to get some of their merch, head over to workingclassbowhunter.com, use the link listed down below, and you'll be able to, you know, get that stuff and save a little bit of money. Next up is excuse me, Osseo Gear. That is the camo brand that I have been working with now for like 3 years. Love their stuff. They have the new Wrap X line, which I do plan on using this season. Very excited about that. So head over to osseogear.com and check out everything they have. And I say it every time, but all the codes in the description, use that at that website at checkout, and you get to save a little bit of money. That's kind of what we're trying to do here, you know, is give back, right? So Osseo, definitely check them out. That is osseogear.com. Next up is gonna be Summit Tree Stands. Got my Summit Climber ready to go. Sticks are, everything's ready to go. Honestly, if deer season started tomorrow, I'd be ready to hit the woods. So Summit covers everything you need climber wise, and they have hang-ons. Safety vest. They literally cover everything that you need. So let's see. Next up is the Bowtique. Dude, best arrow wraps in the market. All right. I mean, they truly, truly are. So Mike can make anything that you want. If you guys are wanting to get a custom set of arrow wraps made, he's your guy. If you want some that he's already designed and put out there on the website, you can get those as well. So head over to the boutiquellc.com to customize your arrows. Bergie Bowsmith. Bergie's a bow wizard, man. He's also a dealer for a lot of the brands that we all use. If you need to get your bow tuned by him, he bear shafts out to 15 yards. And dude, I don't know of anybody else that's doing that. So super awesome, dude. Super awesome, you know, things that he's doing. And yeah, love to help support him. Let's see what else. He definitely knows what he's doing when it comes down to bows. I am honestly blown away by some of the stuff that I've seen him be able to do. I've watched a lot of his YouTube stuff. He's got a YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to that. And, you know, he's out there just trying to teach people stuff about their bows so you guys can do that stuff at home. So please go support Bergie Bowsmith. I believe it's bergiebowsmith.com, and check out everything on the website. Next up is G5 Outdoors. So I am going to be running both the T2s and the Mega Meets this year. Really excited to see what the T2s do. You know, I used 2-blade mechanicals last year and had some success. But the things I've heard about the T2 is, honestly, there's nothing negative I've heard. And you guys know the Mega Meat, in my opinion, is the best mechanical broadhead that's ever been made. So if you want to use any of those, head over to g5outdoors.com and pick up a pack. Also, if you want to support your local bow shop, I promise you they probably have those heads. And honestly, I'm so thankful to be working with G5. Their stuff is top notch, in my opinion. Next up is going to be Prime Archery. So I'm shooting the Prime Form 34. That thing's dialed, man. It is the most stable bow I've ever shot. I know they've got some other things coming. I'm very excited to see what it is. Once I know more, I'll tell you guys. But Prime is awesome. Their bows, in my opinion, are the best ones on the market. And I've shot every flagship I could get my hands on, and that's the one I decided to go with. So head over there to primearchery.com. Check out the new Form 34, also the new Form 30, and then you can also see their RBX Plus 32 and 34. Next up is Dialed Archery. So my dialed proof has been dialed, no pun intended, for the past couple of months, man. And I'm so hyped and so thankful to be working with those guys, and very excited to get this site out in the woods and lay some deer down. So head over to Dialed Archery. They just did a Lone Wolf custom gear small batch. I know they've got more stuff coming. They always do small batch stuff, and you know, now I know they're doing engraving, so that is going to be things are going to change. I really hope they start doing custom engraving because that would be sick. Next up's Ace Hardware Social Circle. That's my local bow shop. Love to support those guys. They lift me up, so I try to lift them up. And if you guys are in the area, you want to get your bow checked out by them, or get a new bow, or get broadheads, whatever you need, they got you covered. Next up is Moultrie. So I put out a new Moultrie Edge Pro 2 yesterday, and it's working just as good as my other ones do. And they also but recently dropped the Moultrie Edge Pro 3. So it's everything that Edge Pro 2 was, except better. So, yeah, man, Moultrie's been in the industry for forever, and very thankful to be working with them. I love their stuff, and I think you guys will too. Let's see. Next up is Bow Hunting League. You can see them wearing their hat. If you haven't signed up yet, you need to sign up. All right. By the time this drops, it's going to be August, and deer season is right around the corner for you guys that live in South Carolina. Deer season is like a week and a half away. So if you haven't joined a team yet, join a team, because it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of free prizes you can win. You can get the meat wagon that is getting worked on, and every buck you kill, you get a t-shirt. So to me, that's pretty sick. Bow hunting leagues giving back to bow hunters throughout the country, and I'm very thankful to have them on as a partner. Next up is going to be boning archery. So I'm running the alphas, the new boning alpha vein that came out a few months ago. I love it. I've built all my arrows with them, and they're super quiet, super stable, have no issues whatsoever. And the way that they designed it is in my opinion, better than all the veins that I've ever used. So head over to Boning Archery. Use the code down below, get you some new veins. We're getting to crunch time, guys. I mean, if your stuff's not dialed in and your stuff's not built yet, you need to get on top of it. So let's see. Next up, okay, so this one's going to be a little different. So in the past, I used to promote The Chase, which is my buddy Brock's YouTube channel. We had a discussion, talked about some stuff, and he decided to change it over to 1227 Productions. And what that is 1227 is I forget what he said it was. I think it's either Jeremiah 1227 or it's Psalms 1227, I believe. So go look that up in the Bible. Brock is doing some great things, trying to push the Lord more, do more work for him rather than himself. And I'm very happy, very proud of him for doing that. So yeah, 1227 Productions. Look it up on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all that stuff, and follow along with what he's doing. Next up is going to be the Scrape Doctor. I've got some scrapes out now. I've had some deer hitting them. This heat that we've been having is really messing with these deer, though. So, it might not be the perfect time in some people's opinions. I love running scrapes all year long, and the Scrape Doctor stuff is fantastic. So head over to scrapedoctor.com, use the code down below, save you some money, and get those scrapes out, because now is the time. Next up is Victory Archery. So I built out my HLRs, and they are sitting at a crispy 447 grains, which means I don't have to change my sight tape. It's the same arrow weight I was using last year, and that 1.5K weave is keeping these tolerances tight. I was shooting them the other day, and my groupings were awesome. So yeah, Victory Archery makes the best arrows in my opinion. They've also got, sorry guys, it's been a long day. They also got the RIP TKOs, the VAP SS, VAP TKO. They have so many different types of arrows to choose from. But my personal favorite so far, since I got them, has been the HLR. HLR has a much more, it's got a lighter GPI, but it's still stiff and strong, which allows you to add more weight up front for higher FOC, which, as we all know, the higher the FOC, the more your arrow should penetrate. So Victory is on it, and they are not disappointing. I mean, seriously, those those arrows are freaking awesome. And last but not least, can be Outdoor Call Radio. So we are getting featured on the Outdoor Call Radio now. That is getting played nationwide. It is based out of Iowa, and it's ran by Mr. Dan Young. And there is an app that you can download. If you go on the Apple Store, I think Google Store, whatever Google's thing is, Microsoft Store, I don't know what it is, but you go on the App Store on your phone and type in Outdoor Call Radio. You can go on there and you can listen to a bunch of different outdoor shows. It's not just this. Dan covers a wide range of different outdoor media, and I think that's good. Oh man, I'm so sorry, guys. It's been a very, very, very long day. But sorry that I know people are gonna hear this like, dude, what are you doing? But yeah, no, the Outdoor Call Radio. Please go support Dan. Go download the app and listen to everything that he's doing. Very thankful to be working with him and the rest of the partners I listed off. If I see him a little off and you hear me yawning, obviously today's been a very long day, and honestly, the past few days has been pretty long. We got a new puppy for my daughter, and we haven't been sleeping much. And this puppy's got a lot of energy and hates being in the crate. So night times have been short, but we're thankful. We love this dog. She's super sweet. Thank God that we got a sweet puppy and not some, super high maintenance, crazy dog. But speaking of God, I have to give everything over to him, man. Even with all the struggles that our family's been going through with, the dog and just the nonstop, always on go lifestyle that we have found ourselves in, the Lord gets us through it. And if you guys are going through anything crazy, anything stressful, I pray that put your faith in Jesus. I do want to say one thing that it made me think of this, and I really am asking every single one of you to pray for this lady. But I went to go get food before I started recording, and long story short, she was being, I guess you could say, attacked by some other guy. No idea why. She was running this cute little cupcake stand, and I was far away when I saw this happening, because I was still driving through the parking lot. But she had this little cupcake stand, and she was just, I guess, trying to sell cupcakes. This dude comes up, he starts knocking the cupcakes off. I don't know if he was on drugs. I don't know what the deal was, but it broke my heart. And to be honest, I had to stop myself from getting out and doing something that would send me to jail. So um, pray for that lady. A lot of people did come and help her. The guy disappeared. I don't know what happened. And she fought back. She did fight back, and she was a lot smaller than him. So kudos to her. But I'm just asking all of y'all to pray for her. Ask that the Lord be with her so that she feels peace and understands that not everybody is like that. But there is evil in the world, and that just proved it. So yeah, Jesus will do that for you. And if you haven't listened yet, okay, so at the time of recording this tomorrow, this episode will drop that I'm about to tell you about. But if you're listening on Tuesday when this episode drops, go look up To Know 'Em Outdoors. That is an episode that I did with my buddy TJ on his podcast. And I got vulnerable, man. I got extremely vulnerable. Told my whole life story, told my testimony, how God, saved me from so many different things, and how I got to have the relationship with him that I do. And, to me, I got to the point where I was actually shaking from the fact that I was actually talking about this stuff. I never talk about this stuff, not openly at least. And it is a hunting podcast, but it's funny because we talk about hunting the first half, and then we talk about my testimony the second. It's wild. So yeah, please go support TJ and everybody else that I've listed. Please pray for that lady. And if you don't know who Jesus is, open up your heart to him. I mean, it's the best thing that you could ever do. And with that said, Michael Perry's waiting on us. Let's hear how you can kill a state record buck on public land. We have the legend himself, if I could speak, Mr. Michael Perry, coming on. Yeah, he's making that face. He's like, legend, sure. I consider you a legend, okay? Anyone that can kill a 196-inch deer on public is legendary in my opinion. But I love the humility. It's been a minute since you've been on, man. It really has, and I'm sorry about that. But what have you been up to? I got to see you at the show last weekend, but what else is going on?
I can't remember last time we was on, but like I retired last August, so this August 16th will be a year. So adjusting to that, and planning, some vacation trips we've done and getting ready for this hunting season that's coming up. Put in for a few drawings between me and my wife. So other than that, having it good right now. So try to stay out of the heat. So
dude, yeah. Have you guys been getting any rain? Because we've gotten little showers here and there, but
we've had a bunch of rain this year, ever since early spring.
Well, I mean, recently. Have y'all got any?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It rained today. It rained a little bit yesterday. It's supposed to rain off and on pretty much all weekend now. So we've had, the bucks should be in pretty good shape now if they didn't hurt too bad from last season, because it was kind of a rough, we had a lot of drought, and mass crop was very limited, and then had some real cold weather that could have made it rough on them. Their bodies were low. It's just a waiting game to see how big. I don't have any pictures yet. I've not run any cameras, this fall yet, just to see if anything's showed up or blown up big. So it's kind of a waiting game, but we've had plenty of rain. If they got their bodies built back good, we should have some good racks. But we'll see. So,
Man, I'm so excited. You post on Facebook constantly these big bucks, and I always have to remind myself, like, because I'm seeing them out of velvet, and I'm like, okay, that's not from this year, but it gets you hyped up, man. I love it, and I'm like, gosh, dude, it's I don't know, season's so close, man. I can almost feel it. But I'll be honest, I have not been over to Public once since last summer. So I'm a little rusty on that. So this episode, like I explained when we weren't recording, we're going to cover pretty much just public land, which seems to be the kind of like, I mean, people are always like, oh, I'm a public land hunter, and they carry some type of pride with that, but it's the way you go about it. It's just straightforward, and the stuff you do works. And I was listening to, so I want to start off with this. I was listening to the Southern Outdoorsman episode you did recently, and there was a story on there that I never knew, because you run 18 Outdoors. So can you explain where that name came from?
Well, as you know, and then I guess your followers might know, or some of them might not know that I've been hunting public land since I was a kid. Very limited on the private land stuff. So, but my brother years ago killed a big old 18 point, just 180-inch on public land, and that was one of my goals, is getting a record book like he did. And then, I was blessed enough to do that. And then in 2021, I killed this 18 point, big buck too. So we both have killed big, huge 18 points off of public land in Alabama. So when I started the YouTube channel, I thought I'm just going 18 Outdoors just coming to my mind. So we'll start it like that, 18 Outdoors, and then the podcast or the YouTube channel is basically about all the stuff we do in outdoors, whether it's hunting public land or fishing or anything like that, traveling out of state public land, just a variety of stuff, basically showcasing what we do, what we enjoy in outdoors on public lands.
So what you're saying is, after people get done listening to this episode, they need to go over to YouTube and subscribe so they can see it and learn even more in depth than what they're going to hear here.
Well, hopefully, but
dude, yeah, honestly, killing big bucks and stuff. Whoever, I'm not gonna say whoever does it earns my respect, because I try to respect everyone, right? But to do it on public and having the experiences I've had on public and seeing some of the bucks on camera that I have, to me, it's like a whole different beast, and I really want to pick your brain on like what it takes to really be successful out there. Because I know last time you came on, you mentioned something about your cameras, how you put them in.
Right.
Well, actually, let's just run back through that. What is your camera strategy?
90% of the time, my camera strategy is for next year's stuff. So as soon as deer season's over with, me and my wife, or me and my buddies, or whoever, we're hitting the woods. And as soon as the season's over, because the sign's so visible and that's left over from the rut and stuff from the previous season. So kind of following tracks and scrape lines, rub lines, and then finding areas of pinches or funnels that I can get to hunt and put a camera there just to see what happens for the next season and kind of get ideas. And then I've only checked them twice a year. So staging cameras out in funnel areas or thermal hub type areas where deer are crossing, going in to check for does, and maybe leaving access from food sources, and maybe possible bedding too, but just anywhere some kind of funky pinch that I can get a camera to, and I know that I can get in there and hunt access without messing it up. So I'll put cameras out like that, and then I'll leave them alone. I'll do that between February to May, and then I'll go back August, September, and make sure the batteries are good, pull the cars, and then get them back set up, make sure nothing is growed up in front of them, and then leave them for the whole season and see what happens. I'm looking to find an area or a pinch that more than one big buck is coming through daylight during a certain time frame that I can hunt. So it's a pretty tough deal, but it can be done. And kind of when you kind of find them areas, it's usually kind of repetitive, as long as you don't have something major change. So that's that's the camera strategy for the rut stuff, so.
Yeah, I feel like you and Joe Miles kind of have the same, really you, Joe, and Bobby Worthington sort of have the same, I guess, viewpoint on rut funnels, because that's something that every time I've talked to Joe or he's been on the podcast, it comes up.
Right.
And like I've found a few on my spots, and I've even found a few over on Public by the House. And it's wild to actually see it and be like, wow, what they're saying really is happening,
It's kind of tough on that because them, like if you go into an area that I find like it, the main point of travel or the main time of travel is only in a certain window.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to be a place that's just tore up, trailed up all the time. So you gotta use trust your gut and kind of use a little bit of woodsmanship to say, if a deer's coming from here to there, point A to point B, try to get them in a spot where you can get to them where they're pinched down, neck down somehow or another, and kind of associate it with maps, looking at where food's at or bedding or where people come in and stuff like that. Just a variety of different things to do that, and just kind of a little bit of guesswork too.
So like when you're pulling cards, do you go back and, because one thing I've kind of always, I'm not gonna say struggle with, but I can't really, I guess, seem to find a different way to do it. But say I've got a camera out on Public, right? I put it out there in February. I come back in mid-August and check it. And I'm seeing, like bucks go from nubs to full racks, some of them maybe even rubbed out.
Right.
But I can't seem to pinpoint like what wind direction, what kind of access. Because on Public, it's because I have so much more experience with private that you sort of know, like you learn the deer on private. It's like, okay, Billy Bob comes in at 5:30. He comes from this side all the time. It's the only way he can come in. Is that like, do you sort of eliminate that when you find funnels and you just are like, this is the only spot that they can come through?
Yeah, try to, that you talk about like some of the velvet stuff. Now that information there, you can't really count on that to mean a whole lot because they're going to bust up, and a lot of the bucks are going to disperse. So that, generally there'll be like one that'll kind of stay in that area if it's a bachelor group. Now, if you get a big monster one early in velvet and he's staying there, it's possible for him to stay there. That's how I found the record. But when he was staying in the same area, and some of the other ones would leave, and then he had one that kind of stayed around, for a while. But so that kind of information, you can't really trust the early spring information. The wind stuff are getting in, as long as, you kind of going in, you always got to check it because there's no, especially hill country stuff, there's no, what the weatherman says is not generally always going to be right. You got to kind of check it. So
yeah, our guy's wrong every time.
Yeah. So I generally don't want the wind going to where I think they're coming from or where they're going. I don't mind it crossing the area because I'm always set up within bow range. So if a buck is right there, I've got a way where I can shoot before they hit the wind. And a lot of times the way I set up on them edges or say shelf areas or above stuff, the wind can go carry over. So it's all that's kind of guesswork. Milkweed helps a lot on that, but but sometimes when you're doing your spring scouting, it's hard to climb a tree and kind of verify that because on the ground it could be different than what's up in the tree. So it's you could carry sticks with you and kind of test that. But I always kind of test it from the ground, with the thermal stuff. The wind, all that's kind of guesswork. So.
I gotcha. So what's the terrain like where you're hunting at? Is it more hill terrain, mountains? Like what are we talking?
Well, it's like the 700-800 feet, as far as the total, but it'd be like 100 to 150 foot variance. So in one area, we hunt some swampy areas, that's low ground areas that might have 30 to 40 to 60 foot, elevation changes. But the main area that we concentrate on where the bigger deer is at is steeper stuff, bluffier stuff, and so you'll have some thermals play a part of it, pretty good bit, more extreme thermals. So.
Okay, see, I'm glad you brought up the thermals thing. So first off, I'm just gonna make a shout out to my buddy Brad, who was asking for the public land episode. So this one's for you, Brad. But he's asked me a ton of times, like, what do I think about? Because he's hunting the mountains of Georgia. He's up there in like, I'm not gonna say the place, but he's up in the mountains of Georgia. Let's just say that. And I've never really hunted that. Like the public land by me is ridge systems. it's got like 400-foot elevation, but it slopes down into a creek and then it goes right back up the other side. And it's kind of like, it's not the same, you know? And so what I've seen here, I can't really, I mean, I could tell them what I've seen and it might help them out, but like, have you, say you're going to hunt the mountains of Georgia, right? What are you going to try and key in on? Obviously trails and sign, but like, I guess e-scouting. Do you do a lot of e-scouting?
I do some, try to get general areas, but I'm not as I wasn't raised on it like y'all was. I don't.
Yeah.
That's something I try to adjust to it. So it's looking at spots, but I'm generally going to try to get out there on boots on the ground. In the hill country area, a mountainous area. If there's not a bunch of pressure from the top, I like hunting the upper thirds. If you got a bunch of pressure from the top, then you're going to have to adjust lower. So that's kind of something you got to kind of feel out. So, but I prefer hunting higher up, and I prefer, like, if you're hunting, say, using thermals or have a thermal issue in drainage, just stay on the lower side, like a pull down water side, or close to like a bluff head where you got water running off. That'll pull scent down. So kind of being strategic with that in your setups and stuff kind of helps. It just, or if you're down in the lower part trying to hunt creek crossings and stuff, if you've got a wider bottom where you don't have to worry about much wind ricochet, you can stay close to the water and let that pull down on the downstream side of a trail or something. So there's a bunch of different ways you can kind of play that. So
I got you.
but the deer, but the deer's got to be there. You got to hunt where the buck's at. So that's the big thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing I keep telling him, because he's saying that they're gonna go, scout and all that stuff. And I mean, how much value do you see in, I guess, summer scouting?
Just getting an idea what the land looks like mainly. It's just that's a hard deal. Now that mountain country, it might not be as hot. You can learn a little bit, but it's so green, it's tough to see a bunch of stuff. I mean, with some of the technology on the map and stuff, I mean, you can do some, but I don't hardly ever do it. I mean, I'll wait till the fall. If I'm going to do any in season scouting or something, that's something I would do then. But generally summer scouting, the only time I do anything like that is I'm driving around, just looking at an area, driving around, just seeing if they're cutting anything or marking the parking places. Maybe looking for some tracks, big tracks crossing or something, but on wet roads after a rain. But other than that, I'm not going to get in them woods and risk getting overheated or anything, because it's been 115-degree heat index here for last week. So,
yeah, dude, it's been brutal here. I need to ask you, because the listeners might be able to hear it. Can you hear the dog freaking out in the back? No.
Oh,
okay. I think I told you Saturday that my wife was getting us a pug. I don't know if I did or not, but she's upstairs right now, losing her mind.
Really? We had a pug that passed away this past year, like 18 years old. One of the best family dogs we ever had. So.
Oh wow, 18, dude! I thought they only made it to like 10.
She made it a long time.
Well, that's promising. Yeah, she's great. I mean, she's my best friend in the morning. I'll go to let her out of the crate, and she comes up, and her whole body's wiggling and shaking, and then she'll like attack my face. She's bit my cheek probably 15 times already. So
wow.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. What's crazy is it circles back to hunting. So this is gonna make sense. But I have this Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer dog toy that we got a couple years ago for my pit bull. She didn't care anything for it. This pug, dude, I don't know if maybe if past lives were a real thing or whatever, but she had to have been a hunting dog, because this dog will grab that deer and shake the crap out of it, and then she'll start at the back end, go to the neck, and then she finishes on the nose. And she just keeps that mouth right there on the nose. And I'm like, dang, girl. I was like, who taught you this? Because I know I didn't.
Yeah.
So
I think it's inherited in them, because that one we had while she was playful like that, if it had a squeaker in it, she's going to mess with it until that squeaker was gone. I mean,
God, she is really losing. Can you not hear that?
I heard that.
Oh, okay. I'll try to edit it out, but if not, it is what it is. I bet my wife is loving that. But all right, so circling back, so the public land stuff, thermals are, at least from what I've heard from you talking about it on other podcasts, and I've heard Andrew and Jacob talking about that stuff a million times. It's very important to, I guess, figure out where the thermals are going. Correct. So for people who don't know what thermals are, can you kind of explain to them like what they are?
It's basically the wind movement controlled by the ground heating up. So, and in the morning when the sun comes up, start heating the grounds up, your thermal's going to rise. As the ground cools in the evenings, it's going to go down. But you can have moving water that affects thermals that'll pull. North side of hills and north side of mountains, you'll have a pull down a lot longer than the other side. It's just leaf cover affects it. Water, sunshine on water can make a funky pull. It hits that water and heats that water up and pull, away from you. So it's just a variety of things, but it's basically just the air is getting heated up and the hot air goes up. So when
Gotcha.
it cools off, it cools going down. So it's just so something to think about. Flat land is not as bad, but you can use that water to an advantage on some of that. So
Okay. So I guess moving into season, say you've already scouted, you've checked your cameras, you got good bucks on there, and you're wanting to, I guess, pinpoint a spot. Are you putting out mock scrapes on public?
I don't hardly ever do that. I
Do you
used
look
to.
for scrapes?
I like for them to be in the area, but I don't. You'll find them in certain areas, but I don't really look for them. I just know they're there. I'm more worried about how they're getting to there. Because I know. So learning that stuff over time, or my age, the stuff I've figured out over the years, or kind of played with. I've hunted scrapes a bunch and just didn't have it much luck because of the ones I were hunting were the ones that they were doing at night. So.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big trail hunting guy, or pinch, or funnels, now for rut stuff. Now early season's a whole different thing. I might hunt a scrape line early season before they start busting up and they're still in their bachelor group stuff. They're playing around making scrapes, they're sparring with each other, but and trying to get that close to bedding. That's what I try to do early season. But as far as messing with scrapes or looking for them, they'll be in the area, but I'm looking for stuff associated with bedding, timber transitions, thermal hubs, where multiple things come together than how deer would get to them places.
Got it. So you're trying to like ambush them almost.
Yeah, basically that's what I'm trying to do. I've had more luck, doing that, and generally it's going to be somewhere where more than one big buck comes through because I like the increased odds. Trying to hunt an individual buck, I'll do that a little bit early season and maybe late season if it's something where I can do that. But most of the time I don't have any tag left or anything. But early season, an individual buck. After that, I'm rut hunting, trying to increase my odds where multiple deer come through an area. So.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'm trying to draw from my own, I guess, scouting experience or even really hunting experience on public. If you go into a place, because I had this happen once, I didn't see anything, but I also don't know if I was doing it right. So I go into this spot on public land that I know that I've had cameras at, but honestly, one of my cameras got stolen actually, two of my cameras got stolen last year, which sucked. First time that's ever happened. And I'm not even running cameras this year. I was like, dude, it ain't even worth it. I still actually have cameras over there I need to go get that have been out there for over a year. But one time I went into I call it a funnel. It's more like this little strip of woods in between a fire break and a field. And that's where I saw the biggest deer I've ever seen on the hoof. It was like 160-inch 10-point.
Wow.
Monster, dude. And scared the crap out of me. I thought it was a squirrel. Which that tends to happen. But prior to that, I had gone in and it was an evening hunt and I happened to see like a bunch of rubs in the area. And I said, you know what? Clearly something's coming through here. I'm going to sit right here. Is that something that you would do? Would you go in there and see a bunch of sign and sit on it? Or are you going to actually focus more like, okay, the sign's there. Let me go find the trail that they're using to get here.
Well, that area you're talking about, like if it's a strip of woods between something, say a SMZ or just a wood thing that's, got a pinch by a river, a smaller area of woods in between, say, food, pine thickets, something to be bedding or, that's key areas. And you find rubs in there, it's going both ways, rubs on both sides of trees and multiple ones and historical ones, old ones, fresh ones, so yeah, that's a key area at the right time. So, using that again at the right time means a lot. If you're a new person to public land, starting out, look at the map, get kind of idea where the food plots and stuff is at. And if you can get into a computer and get on the aerial, look at kind of some of the timber changes or use Onyx, Spartan Forge, some of that's real good about showing different types of timber, and you look for them different edges, and then when you get out there, you can, I don't know what kind of public land y'all got as far as access, but a lot of ours have got roads that are dirt roads. Or gated road, and you can walk in after rain, and look for tracks and see, and then kind of look at the map and trying to figure out, tracks are not hard to figure out which way they're going. So you can kind of get out there and look, well, he's going there for a reason. If he's going into a pine thicket, probably the bed or something. So if it's heading toward a food plot or pastures or, whatever, then they're going toward food. So kind of thinking about some of the simplicity, you can make it kind of simple. Then, when you're first learning to go to public, just look for dang tracks, pay attention where people's parking at, and then looking at different edges and different timber, knowing that deer, especially bucks, they love shadows. They love quick way to escape. They look, if they're in the open, they're going to be a bound or two to a thicket generally in the day, especially in the daylight. So kind of simplifying things a little bit as you're trying to, learn how to be on a public land hunter. And then after that, you can get more into depth about hunting gaps, pinch points, edges, maybe grunting, some of the calling stuff a little bit. It's just, there's different ways and different little techniques that you can put into your little arsenal or your tackle box, toolbox as you're using for hunting. So, but basically learning, you got to start with the basics. Tracks is one thing, and droppings is that's two of the most important things besides the deer standing there. So to me, so so nowadays with so much technology and so many podcasts and all that, it's easy to get overwhelmed and try to make it too hard on yourself. So try to make it a little bit simple to start with. So, keep up with them girls, during the rut, you keep up with them girls and find ways to hunt edges where they would go to check them, is a real good way of doing them during the rut. So,
I'm gonna clip that. That's going on social media, but I will make sure there's context. Don't worry. No, yeah, I mean that's true, man. Like public land, I just feel like is daunting to a lot of people, because especially in Georgia. And can you guys bait in Alabama?
No, not on public.
Well, no. I'm just saying in general.
In private, yeah.
Okay, so it's very similar to us then.
Right.
Got it. So I feel like when people talk public, it's like they think. Well, first off, they think there's no big deer out there, which you're living proof that's not true. I've seen proof that that's not true. But I think it's just we've gotten like private land hunters like myself. We've gotten so used to being able to manipulate what these deer are doing to the extent of I could just go put 40 pounds of corn out and be like, all right, I know I'm going to get at least 5 to 10 deer on this. Don't know what they're going to be, but something's going to show up. Public land is like, I feel like it kind of evens the playing field. You really have to learn the woodsmanship and stuff and be able to walk in the woods and say, okay, I can see that trail is coming this way and this trail is coming this way. I'm at the meeting point. Where's the tracks going? And then, or if there's rubs, like you said, follow where the rubs go. What are some key points of woodsmanship though? That's one thing that I've heard that term thrown around so much, and maybe I just wasn't paying attention, but I've never really fully or heard somebody explain in depth what it is. Like, what is woodsmanship for those who maybe don't know?
Well, it's just kind of being part of the woods. To me, it's kind of when you walk into the woods, kind of start looking. You're looking for, if you're trying to be a deer in the woods, looking for, say, browse where deer's nipping stuff. That, of course, the tracks, and then kind of looking and seeing how, like, because generally in some kind of hill country or something, a buck likes using upper travel, or he's using a side advantage, and using the wind coming over at certain times. So kind of adjusting yourself when you walk in the woods or try to be like a deer or an animal, whatever you're trying to pursue, squirrel, whatever. Then plus learning how to not get lost, get and trust yourself.
I was going to get to that.
So, technology, compasses and stuff like that, but, paying attention, the way you're walking, the way creeks are going, the hills, the variety of things. Don't just walk in there wide open, not paying attention. So going in slow, stopping, looking at stuff, looking at the surroundings, pay attention to what kind of blowdowns, what wild oaks, red oaks, your variety of mass crops, uh, beech trees, cedars, pines, paying attention to all of that. And then kind of think, if you was a deer, how would you bed, especially a buck or something, how would you bed to watch some of that? Because sometimes, certain times of year, if young bucks or deer bed pretty close to where their food's at. So how they would be kind of monitoring that, and how could you get in, to hunt that without them knowing you're there? So that's one of the worst things about baiting to me is when you're putting something out, the deer figuring out, how quick where that's coming from. They're just laying there basically pretty close watching a lot of times, so they know when you're there. So it makes that kind of tougher. I'd hate to know I had to bait, and hunt like that, because trying to get between them and the food sometimes will be hard, because they're laying there watching it most of the times,
Yeah.
or laying there watching how you getting in there. So that kind of makes it harder. Where in the big wood stuff, when you have a bunch of mash crops and stuff like that, they move more because they can eat anywhere. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, baiting, man. Yeah, I had this conversation with somebody, might have been last week, I don't remember, but recently, where we were talking about it and how it's kind of funny looking at it from both sides. Because on one hand, the general thought is, oh, baiting makes it easier than just out there without it, right? The problem is, in Georgia, everybody baits. I mean, legitimately every single person that hunts private land has a corn pile out. So I feel like that sort of changes it to where you really have to learn how to hunt that, and I know you can't bait on public, which is why it's so, I mean, I'm actually really excited to go hunt it this year, because there is no pressure,
Well, you can, I mean, like, you can also, if you're hunting public that's close to private, you can kind of,
you can play that.
Look at that and see, because a lot of times the deer will bed on the public and go to the private to hit the corn and stuff like that. So there's, varieties of ways to do that, or trying to look at that. So it does kind of change the thing when everybody's dang baiting. So it kind of, there's some people say it hurts part of the public that we got here, because if it's a blocked up piece of public that's got a lot of private mixed in and around and stuff, if everybody around there is baiting, they're worried about it keeps them pulled off. But once they get a lot of pressure on the private, they'll bet on the public. So you can kind of look at that and try to figure them out. So,
yeah, we've got a place out by me that I was actually talking to the guy at the archery range up there about it. And he told me about this buck they saw last year that was considerable size. I mean, bigger than anything I've shot, right? And he owns 1,000 acres that butts up to it. And he kept telling me the same thing. He's like, yeah, man, he'd show up on my camera at night, never daylighted. He's like, he was bedding over in public, and no one really hunts over there. So I think him and one other guy knew about this deer, and they never killed him. And apparently the rumor is people are seeing him, or at least one of my buddies is seeing him, and he's even bigger this year. So I think I know where I'm going.
So, that's also one thing, Georgia would be kind of similar to Alabama. Depends where you're at, but once a buck gets mature, his body's already mature, so he don't have to eat as much. So he can bed a mile away from a major food source or corn pile or whatever, and stay there, and then do all that stuff at night. So that kind of makes that tough. So they don't have to, they're not like a doe or a baby. They're, does trying to get over from raising babies, and babies are trying to eat to grow up. So they're eating way more than a big buck would. So that's it's harder to figure a buck out on a food pattern. So that's why the rut makes it, a little bit easier. Of course, it ain't easy, but you got to think about that. A buck's a little bit different, especially mature ones, as far as that stuff. That's why a lot of people, the cell cam thing is, they'll put a cell cam on food and just wait for the buck to show up in daylight. And a lot of times when that's very successful, it's after the rut, when the buck's trying to build his body back up a little bit. He's kind of vulnerable on that. So that's the downfall, or to me, because you're taking away from the hunting. You're just waiting for him to be vulnerable, because he's trying to build his body back up. So you just wait for him to get triggered on a cell cam, and then you just go in there and shoot him, basically. So it's not a whole lot of hunting to that. So to me,
yeah. I mean, you're basically talking about what happened this morning with that one buck I was telling you about. He was watching that spike, and I could see it. And it's really funny, because I've gone from, just wanting to kill a big deer to actually wanting to get on like a mature animal and sort of pinpoint one deer down. There are options at this other spot, but this is the only time I've ever seen a deer over there do this, where they are at the very edge of what the camera can see. And honestly, if that spike wasn't there, it probably wouldn't even have gone off,
Oh,
but he's
yeah.
watching him. And I mean, so like, have you ever seen, let me ask you this. Have you ever been on public and you're hunting over, I'm assuming you hunt over food, right? Like the acorns and all that stuff. Have you ever seen a young deer come in and just be right there in front of you, say a spike, and then you look up and you see a more mature deer off in the back and he's just standing there watching him? What is he doing? Is he scent checking?
Well, he's watching to see what goes on because he's learned enough to know that he don't want to be the first one out. So I mean, just they're always generally that's what happens. The bigger bucks either in the middle of a crowd or in the back. It's just because he's watching and surveying the area, but he's also watching what that deer is doing with its surveillance. So it's almost like he's got a scout in front of him. So I've messed up a couple times on shooting deer. One, especially bow hunting. One of the first one come in with a young buck, and then shot him, and then later, about 5-10 minutes later, I hear something. Here come 2 or 3 more. They're just kind of staggered back, and 2 of them was nice, and they started sparring and stuff. So when they're still in groups, it's kind of hard. You got to get past the first couple. Sometimes it might not work because they'll linger around enough and catch you wind or something. So that kind of makes that tougher at times. But yeah, they're always watching. Even I've watched bucks that'll come up to an edge or to a food plot or a cutover or a different timber transition. They'll stop. Even crossing a creek or something. They first come up, they stop. Or if they first get to the creek, they're stopping, kind of looking before they commit to any kind of open space or any kind of different timber. So they're always real leery about that. So crossing roads, I've seen big bucks to be standing like a statue on the side of the road when you drive by. They don't even move because they've just learned. They've learned what to do. So
Yeah, I've had that happen a lot. I had that happen last year. This like had to be 136 or not 136, 130-inch 6-point sitting on the side of one of the back roads we were driving home late at night. And he just stood there. And I got nervous at first, but he didn't even move. I mean, maybe flickered his ear a bit. And my wife was like, "Oh, there's a big deer." I was like, "Oh, I know there's a big deer." I was like, "But he ain't going nowhere because he's surveying. He's smart."
right.
And that's just over by the road. So trying to hunt them, I mean, and that's the thing that I constantly keep hearing and finding myself say is that hunting a mature buck, you're basically hunting a different animal. I mean, the
Oh,
way that they act, and I've tried in my early years, I had a 160-inch 9-point on a piece of private that was 3 acres, just 3 acres. And I'm over here, Mr. Oh, you put corn out, they're going to show. Why wouldn't he show? It's food. And
right.
oh, it's the rut. Let me use doe and estrus. And dude, it was rough. I learned the hard way, but it taught me that, a 2.5-year-old deer like this one back here, he came to the food, no problem. There was no strategy involved other than putting the food out, sitting, shooting him, done. Ever since then, I haven't killed a buck in 3 years since I've killed this deer. And I've been learning every year because I've been chasing more mature animals that like you really do have to one, be lucky because you never know if they're actually going to be in there, right? But you also have to strategize, and you can't just go in most of the time and be like, yeah, I think right here is going to be good, and then have a 190-inch deer walk up.
Yeah.
So, and that,
Yeah.
but again, that's with public. Public is just, to me, it's like you could walk in there and there could be a state record walking around, right? I mean,
Well,
you know.
well,
But-
that could happen about anywhere, but yeah, it just it could happen anywhere. But it's the hunting thing. You have to hunt. You have one of the things I learned is patience. When you for rut funnels and travel corridors during the rut, with the stuff I've learned with camera stuff and kind of some of the other stuff is you'll have they ain't going like you can't just blow in there and say one day and do it. Yeah, it happens, but it might take 3 or 4 days, especially with a bigger woods area or a huge chunk of public or a huge chunk of private. If they got a bunch of different doe groups, that might take them a while to get back through there.
Mhm.
When they're checking, so you got to be a little bit patient. And don't be worried about what's over the next hill stuff. Just trust your gut, trust the things you've learned, and stick with that plan.
So I've listened to a lot of Dan Infalt stuff talking about hunting bedding areas.
Yeah.
Well, first off, do you hunt bedding areas? And if you do, what is the strategy to that?
If I've hunted suspected bedding areas, and then ones you've learned about over time where does will bed. You know, bucks to me and where we're at, it's almost impossible. You know, especially during the rut part because they don't bed in the same place. Sometimes they'll bed close to where they know where does are going to come through, where they can watch the area. So that's really hard to do. But keeping up with doe bedding, you know, especially in the winter, they like bedding in places where the sun comes up, shines on some points or some sage or, you know, cut over stuff. So learning where them places are, you know, they'll kind of adjust or move because of where the temperature changes. So learning that, yeah, I do hunt stuff like that, but I don't hunt right on top of it. Most I kind of hunt where I think a buck's going to that, or downwind of it, you know. So that hunting like Dan, you know, is what he does up there. You know, he's got a good way of doing it, but it's harder here for me to do that, you know, because of what we got. They got way more places to bed than some of the places he hunts. So
I gotcha. See, and I've never been up there to see it. I mean, I do now have permission on a piece in Wisconsin, but that's not happening for another year or two. So I don't know really. I've never hunted up north. It's always been in our area.
yeah.
So like, all right, let me run this by you. I want you to tell me if I'm right or wrong. If I go into public and I see this super thick, like briar thicket, right? Or say you've got pines and oaks on one side, you go across the cutover and you've got just a standing super thick, like small pine forest, I guess, right? Plantation. When you see a place that's super thick, this is what I'm getting at. When you see a place that is just super thick, does your mind immediately go, okay, a buck's going to be bedded in there? Or are you kind of like a little hesitant? Because my issue has always been if there's a big buck in there, I would think if he is coming in and out, you would be able to see where he's coming in and out of because of how thick it is. Or am I completely wrong at that?
Well, so that's at times, yeah, they can bed in thick stuff, but they also like bedding in places, you know, where they can have a real visual. You know, they bed up with their back up, get something hard. You know, wind's coming over their back, so they can smell anything coming behind them, but they can see. So they generally like some kind of hump or higher up thing. You know, generally. You know, sometimes you know it's not, but when their pressure's on, they will, or when they're watching places for doe. So thick stuff, they can cut in there if it's especially a pretty good size. Get in there and find something in there where they can see if something comes in there, or they can hear when something comes in there. Yeah, but it's not always true because, like you say, if they keep going in there a bunch, that's why it's so hard in the South. It's easy for you know to find them. You would think,
Yeah.
but they don't do like that because they don't bed the same place over and over again most of the time in the South. So, and I feel like sometimes when they get to this place that bed in, they can jump like 20 foot to clear something and get in there. You know, it's just some of the places they bed, well, how they get in there, you think I don't know how they got in there, but I think they jump in there where they're not leaving a dang war slick path through there because now a lot of times they J hook, you know, because that way if something's following their trail, you know, they can see their back trail. So they J hook some of that stuff. So but not all, it don't mean just because of a thick spot in there, it could be buck, you know, yeah, maybe, or it could be does, but it's more about some of the terrain to me, like secondary points. You know, you got a straight line ridge, something that comes off, you know, they'll cross at a draw head or something and get up on them points where they can watch down with the wind coming on the back, and they can bail off and more than one way. So they got, you know, multiple ways to escape. So them places I like better than, like you say, just a thick spot, you know. And cutovers, they'll be in some of the weirdest places in cutovers, you know, and then the thermal stuff in a cutover, like little draws, they'll bed some of them where the wind comes down a lot to them, where they can, if anybody or anything comes in there, they'll smell it coming to them, they slip out. So but they're always still, they have a lower part of exit, you know, plus the upper or the side. They got more than one way to get out. So just learning that over time, it is what you got to do. It's not going to be just the same exact spot or one little thicket, you know. Sure, sometimes maybe, but not all the time. They generally like have a visual, you know. Again, generally, you know, every buck's gonna have a different mindset or different, you know. Some of them's more aggressive than others, so they'll leave a lot of sign than other ones will. And some of them know that they're that big, they don't have to leave sign. So that makes that harder because you don't see the stuff. They just like they pop up out of anywhere, you know. why that buck there? He never left any sign. Well, if he's monster, he don't have to leave sign because he knows he's the boss. So
Yeah.
that's where tracks kind of play into some of that stuff. So, but they're all unique. So it's hard. If it was that easy, like you say, well, I'll just drive around and see a thick spot somewhere and know a buck's gonna be there. Well, not always. Yeah, maybe, but each area like that's got to be investigated. If you know about areas like that, investigate them after season. Yeah, you might be able during the season go in there and check and blow it. And if you blow one out, yeah, he could come back, but
Yeah.
you never know. But I don't like messing with them like that generally. So I would wait till after season and kind of verify what you think, or you
And
can
then
do a,
plan
or
for
you can
next
do a,
year.
right, or you can do a hunt on it and just kind of watch, like an observation hunt. So
See, and that's the crazy thing is there's so many different ways, I guess, to do this, because like I talked to Tim Knight and I asked him basically the same question about scouting and stuff. He's like, man, I'll go in there and if I see sign, I'm setting up right there. And he's like, some of these guys that have clubs and leases, they'll go in there and they'll booger it up, which I did this, but he was like, they'll go in there and they'll put up the stand and they'll sweat and then they'll go back 3 days later and nothing will show because all their
right,
scent is in there.
right,
But then like your method, I think is equally just as good as his, just going in, seeing the sign and going up because you're doing it in advance. And so after a while, you start seeing the pattern, you start seeing like the areas that are holding bucks, you know where to go, and then you just go in there and you kill them. I mean, it's kind of that simple.
right. If I'm going somewhere new or different in season, yeah, you go to your find sign or find tracks or fresh rub lines,
Mhm.
in between food and bedding and stuff like that, and set up in a strategic spot. Or if you jump deer, you know, set up there, or you go walk toward where they run a little bit, and set up there, and see what happens because they're there for a reason. So the freshest sign is a deer standing in the track. So, but yeah, finding if you're doing something new or going to an area fresh or in season stuff, yeah, you hunt with the freshest sign. Is that you don't want to hunt old sign or no sign. So other than that, the history you get from cameras, helps. So,
Yeah.
but
So what you're saying is if you ain't running cameras and you see sign, it's just common sense to hunt there rather than
yeah,
okay. Well, look, common sense ain't that common anymore these days. So I I feel like I had to say that. So you said something earlier about not getting lost, and you told you let me ask you this. When you were coming up, what was it like for you to go onto public and like what were the experiences that you had that I guess got you to where you're at now? I know when you were younger you told some funny stories on other podcasts I've heard, but like now if I go on a place I've never been to, I can just pull up Onyx or Spartan Forge, make a pin and then walk in, have the whole trail, turn around, go to wherever and I can find my way back. But like before that was a thing, what did y'all do?
there were things you could use. You had people use flag and tape, or you stayed by a certain creek system. Like a lot of creek with the hill country stuff, you could run a drainage or something like that, and then just pop off of a drainage if you found sign. Then you hit that drainage and go back. Or creeks or individual ridge lines. So you would use that. There was at times, people mark stuff with a machete or a hatchet or something, but you had to be able to see to do that. So at night, it was tougher. You kind of stay closer at night, but in the morning we take off and go pretty good ways. But we knew, like you say, we went in at a drainage or a woodline edge or a following a creek or something like that. We didn't do something stupid, but we just used woodmanship to learn that creek or that drainage system. If you crossed the drainage, in the dark or in the morning and then hunt until dark, you better make sure you be able to get back in that same drainage to get out. We've been lost before and spent the night one time and been lost before where it took a long time to get out because, and that's generally tracking the deer into the dark, following blood or something without any kind of compass or anything and get turned around. So, but we've done that a couple of times, but other than that, you just learned how to do it. But now, of course, you ain't got to worry about it all. But that's the way we grew up. That's what we didn't have anything. We didn't even have a compass. We just knew we would follow certain things, or maybe hanging some kind of flagging in the daylight to know come back to this point and then look for that flagging up there and go out that way. So it just a variety of things. But
Dude, what was that like having to stay the night in the woods on like I mean, I'm assuming it's probably thousands of acres, right?
Yeah, it's a 40 something thousand acre spot. You know, but it wasn't bad because it was me and my brother and my dad. We built a fire and spent the night. Then,
Oh, okay.
you know,
I got
so
you.
we got woke up in the dark by somebody driving by 100 something yards away on a gravel road. But we was about 3 roads away from where we started out. So
That's
it wasn't
crazy.
that bad. You know, if it by myself, yeah, it'd been tough. But with
Yeah,
3 of us, was fine. So
dude,
nobody,
it just kind of breaks my heart that, the younger kids these days aren't going to get to experience that unless they leave their phones at home. But I mean, who really, I'm 30 years old and I know I probably wouldn't leave it. So who's younger than me that's going to do that? You
well, if
know?
you get out there like a lot of them, which we learn, you know, with the phones is to turn that sucker on airplane mode or whatever. If you get somewhere where you don't have signal, because they'll burn up a lot of battery looking for the signal. So you got to learn that. When the battery goes dead, you're in a mess. You know.
Then you're put back to the old school ways.
All right.
That's awesome, man. Well, all right. So what did we miss anything on, I guess, key points of public land that we need to cover?
I mean, you know, public. You know, it's not. It's a great experience. You know, if you're somebody that's wanting to do it, or if you're still learning, whatever. I mean, there's a couple of things. You know, edges. You know, varying types of timber, varying types of terrain, you know, means a lot. You know, everybody that's listening to a bunch of my podcasts or whatever knows I love creek crossing stuff, and I learn a lot of starting points from creeks and drainages, finding tracks where stuff cross. You know, you can do that on flat ground. You know, so it's not that hard to find sign. It's just using your thought process or some questions like why did that deer cross right there, or why that track's right there, or why that rubs that way, or why that scrapes there, and kind of looking at things, being, you know, trying to run some things through your mind why they would be doing that, and look at the stuff around you. And if you got the good equipment, you know, good phone stuff and good maps, maybe look and see what's a little bit farther out to learn that. So it's not, you know, it can be a good time. Don't worry about, you know, who you might run into or outside influences. Just worry about what you're doing and try to make a good experience out of it. But just don't overthink it, you know. So, you know, so it's just, and it can be fun, you know. And it can be unique because there's a bunch of different. Like in Georgia, y'all got way more public land than we got, and y'all got some unique opportunities like free tags on certain pieces of public
Yeah.
that you can go to. I mean, now who would love? I mean, who don't love that? You go somewhere could kill a 130 for a free tag, you know, and still be able to hunt your normal areas. So that's something I would look into. That's kind of the way we was raised up. We were jumping around chasing muzzleloader hunts or primitive weapon hunts because you could either sex hunt then. So you learned about different
Mhm.
areas and, you know, and had fun doing that versus, you know, trying to stay in one spot and try to big buck hunt, because they wasn't really no big buck hunters back in them days. They were just all deer hunters, meat hunters, basically. So having that
Mhm.
unique part of that, and then plus you were going with a bunch of buddies and, you know, having a good time, fellowshipping, you know, maybe camping and cooking and all that. So try to get some kind of enjoyment out of it, especially with sharing it with somebody. You know, now, you know, me and my wife, that's what we do. We go to different places all the time, so even out of state. So, you know, you can just simplify it and don't overcomplicate it. So.
Well, if you and the wife are ever looking for public land in Georgia to hunt, you guys want something different, I got two pieces 15 minutes from my house that one of them had a guy on the cover of GON last year because
Wow.
he killed like 130-inch deer or something on which I know that what's crazy is like I say that and then other people in other states are like, oh, that's nothing. But for in our area, 130-inch deer is pretty solid, right?
Well, 130-inch deer is a very, very nice buck.
That's what I'm
I don't
saying. I've heard other people say
especially,
before, it's like, oh, I don't want no 130s. I'm after the 170 plus. And I'm like, dude, you better be over in Oklahoma or Kansas or something because
yeah,
down
that's
here, good luck.
that's very, very hard to do in the South. I mean, yeah, it's possible, but you're going to have some boring days and some boring years more than likely, you know. And you might not ever kill one if you got that kind of a goal. So keep it realistic. You know, the guy, you know, we was over at that show and watched the truck buck shoot, and the guy that won the truck was a public land hunter.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, so
Anything can happen.
I
Dude,
mean,
that's awesome.
that's fun. It's your land. You don't have to pay a bunch of money to go do, just a
Yeah.
license or whatever. So yeah, if you want to go out of state, if you're wanting to do a goal on some big monster one, it's the same thing. You can go hit, that's what we do. We go some out of state stuff on public, but you can raise your bar up as far as what your goals are, in Iowa or Kansas, whatever. So kind of keep it realistic and kind of keep it fun, because if it's not fun, it can be rough.
Yeah.
But you
I've had
don't
a
want.
few times, man, where I've gone to public land by me, and this was earlier in, I guess you could say, my hunting career, whatever you want to call it. But I remember a few times early season going in there thinking and going further than I normally would, right? Like I was comfortable with the area. I knew the area. I'd go further in, and then I just wasn't prepared. And I had a horrible time. And then, of course, the only deer I see is on my way back with my tree stand half hanging off my back, my bow in one hand, absolutely not ready, my book bag in the other. And then this doe comes walking out 40 yards. And I'm just like, I set everything down. I got the tree stand on my back still, so I'm kind of all like Quasimodo, a little bunched up. And I try to draw back, and she didn't even care. That's the crazy part for me, is I would think on public these deer would be like, oh, human, I'm gone. But some of the ones I see don't even seem to really care. They'll
Wow.
watch you for hours. It's nuts, man. But yeah, public land, I feel like gets you, just personally, you get more of a, what's the word? I don't want to say genuine experience, because obviously every time, I hunt private, it's a genuine experience, but you get more, it's a different experience.
Yeah.
You literally just go out there, use what you know, and try to get on what you can. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. Well, look, man, before we wrap this up, I need the people who don't know the story, if you don't mind, can you tell us the story again? And you already know what I'm going to ask.
No, I'm not sure.
I can see it. I can see it. Can you tell us the story about your record book buck?
The record book buck, everybody knows pretty much. If you don't know, it's 18-point, non-typical muzzleloader state record, 196 and 3/8.
Mm.
I put some cameras out in a place and found this edge that when I went and checked the camera in April, I had this crazy non-typical buck. He was like 4 years old. In November and in February, daylight. February, it was after season, but he's still carrying his antlers, and he's running around with 2 or 3 more. So, but in November, it was daylight in a certain time frame, the first week of November. So the next year, I kind of hunted that area because there was more than one buck coming through there, and I missed him by a day. But after season, when I pulled the camera, he was like a little like a 160, but he had a couple splits and stuff, but you could tell it's the same deer. So the next year, I said I talked to a friend of mine. I said I'm not going in there, because I would bow hunt some in there to an extent, but knowing that he was there during that same week, daylight, and just like a couple of days, it was it. I had cameras in there in 2 different places in a half-a-mile area, and the only time I gained daylight picture was the first week of November, and it was during a muzzleloader hunt. So the year that I took him, I went in there it was actually the last day of the muzzleloader hunt. The first time I went in there, and he was behind another buck, a pretty good 6 or 7 point, like a 170, 80 pound. He was a big bodied deer, decent rack. Any other year I might have shot him with a muzzleloader. So, but he come by at 9:45, eating wild oats. We had a huge mass crop out here, acorns everywhere. Then about 5 minutes later, I seen this huge frame coming by, and it was a little bit lower, and I got positioned around with the muzzleloader, and he was in a bunch of old green stuff because it was real green that year. And when he stepped out, I shot. Long story short, it was like a 40-yard shot with muzzleloader, and he run about 70 yards. And I get over, and when I find him, I see him laying facing me, and again, I don't know if he's even alive because I don't mess with them cameras. So I was hoping he was still alive, and I was assuming, because that's one thing I preach. Don't worry about something you can't control. Just trust your gut, trust your plan, and it worked out on that hunt. I was, when I got to him, tears of crying. I was crying like crazy because I knew it was one I had on camera. Didn't know if I'd had pictures of him that year or not until after I pulled the cameras, and I did. I had 2 or 3 sets of pictures on 2 different cameras, and then I think only a couple of daylight pictures. But anyway, it was just a very great experience, and just, it was a plan that I kind of planned out and it worked, but a lot of times it don't work. So it's just one of 3 bucks that I've killed that I've had on camera. The rest of them, I'll kill them somewhere where I have a bunch of bucks on camera, but I don't have that one on camera. It's been
Huh.
different buck using that same area. So it's just, that's one thing to think about. Them cameras, don't live by them. Just live by that. There's something coming through there, but don't try to be buck specific, because that'd make it tough. So
Yeah. I mean, I've seen that myself, man. I had cameras last year, and one of the deer that I'm after now daylighted last year, and he was right behind the tree where the camera's at. And I immediately thought, I'm like, if I wasn't here, I would have only thought one deer showed up.
yeah,
And I mean, God, I love that story, dude. And honestly, getting to see that buck in person last week, my God. I knew immediately. I saw him and I was like, there he is. I know that deer.
yeah. I mean,
Awesome, man.
he's a beautiful buck. And another thing is, I had a camera there, like I say, and that's that 6 or 7 point that come by. I got his picture. The monster buck went by a little bit lower out of the camera's frame, so they don't always, they kind of move. They don't always track for track in the area. They kind of, if it did, it would be, that'd be easier to kill. That's why they live that long. They know how to adjust stuff. They just, they use them. That other buck was basically a different level, so he was watching or smelling whatever that area, and then he was lower. So they're kind of they're being strategic. So, some people might have not even caught that buck moving. If he'd been another 15 yards, and he'd been gone. So
Yeah.
So it's also, another thing, just paying attention. Be very observant while you're hunting. So
Yeah, keep that nose out of that phone, which I've
Yeah.
been guilty of too. But this year, no, man, that sucker's staying in my pocket. I got an Apple Watch. If anyone needs me, I'll know. But look, man, I appreciate you coming on. This is going to help out a lot of people. And it's always just fun getting to, talk and hang out with you, man. I feel like I don't get to, I feel I don't want to ever like blow your phone up and be like, hey, man, what's going on? How's this going? How's this going? Got any deer on camera? Because, I don't want to be annoying. But
hey, I appreciate that. You'd be surprised the message and stuff I get, but I enjoy all of it. Try to help anybody out the best way I can. It's just, that's part of what we do. That's why we got the channel started, is, showing how we hunt, the scouting. There's a bunch of different things on the channel. It ain't just about hunting. It's about how we do it. Some of the things that we do, how we get there, some of the scouting, tips, it's a variety of things, so. And that's why we do it, is to help and for the community, just like talking to you, seeing you at the show, seeing other people in them shows, that we're a unique community, and we're, blessed by God to be able to manage land and manage animals for what we need for sustenance and stuff, and for maybe some for trophies, but it's just for our enjoyment and to take care of the animals is why we do that, and then, and have a good group of people. So.
man, that was such a good way to end this episode. I love it. That was perfect. Awesome, buddy. Well, thank you for coming on. If anybody wants to watch your stuff, it's 18 Outdoors on YouTube, right?
Yep. Yes, sir.
And Instagram as well?
Instagram on 18 Outdoors. Facebook is just Michael Perry. If they wanted a book, they can still get the book on Amazon. So if that's still available, I mean, just whatever y'all want to do. I mean, yeah, you can get a hold of me through any of that messenger stuff. So.
All right. Well, people blow your phone up, don't blame me.
Hey, I love it. So.
Awesome, buddy. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and we need to do, if you're open to it after season's over, I want to do a season recap with you. Because I just that sort of thing gets me hyped up for the next year, and I would just love hearing about people's success. So thank you again for coming on. Seriously.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.